Hello, good evening and welcome to Generation Rent's webinar on managing your energy bills this winter. This is for any private renter who is, well, feeling cold and needing help and advice with how to keep their home warm during the next few months. It's obviously got pretty cold already. I had a big cold snap already, so I think it's a good time to get our expert panelists sharing some tips. We've just had the budget as well, which has contained a few things that anyone should know, particularly renters. Um, we've got a great panel. We've got James Maybe from National Energy Action, and we've got Joseph Green and Jane Sorensen from Octopus Energy. They'll be presenting about what they do, what their organisations do, what you as renters should know about what support and advice is out there. If you have questions, we have a Q&A. Please put your questions in the chat. You'll be entirely anonymous, or you can choose to be entirely anonymous. So please fire away with questions after the presentations. In about 20 minutes time, we'll have some questions and hopefully get some good answers and good discussion going with our panelists. So without further ado, I'll hand over to James from National Energy Action. Thanks very much for joining us.
Super, thanks Dan, and hi everyone. I'm James Maybe, Policy Analyst at National Energy Action, if the introduction and my garish background didn't give it away. So we are the UK's national fuel poverty charity, and our mission is a fairly simple one. We want everyone to live in a warm, safe and healthy home. So we go about that by providing practical advice and support to households. And alongside my colleagues in the policy team, we also advocate for fair policies and regulations around energy bills, the energy transition, and home energy efficiency. So tonight I'll be covering three sort of main areas. Firstly, I'll talk about what sort of help is out there right now and how to get it. Secondly, touch on the kind of key changes in the recent budget on the sort of energy side and the private rented side. And then finally, whether there's government or council support to help reduce energy use. So I'll whiz through those sections, but obviously, as Dan said, please do fire away any comments or thoughts or questions, which we'll cover in the Q&A. Before I get going, I'm afraid I don't have like a shiny, snazzy slide deck, so you'll just have to do with me for my section, so I can only apologise. But yeah, starting with the support available now. In terms of direct government support for sort of energy bills specifically, the real flagship one is the Warm Home Discount. So this is the key energy affordability scheme that provides a £150 rebate off your electricity bill and does so every year during the winter for those that qualify. In terms of the sort of process of accessing the WHD, for most households in England and Wales, it's an automatic process. So if you're on qualifying means tested benefits, the government will match your data with the Department for Work and Pensions, and then your supplier will apply that discount between October and March each year. So again, most who qualify for this would get it automatically. So if you are eligible, it should appear on your bill at some point this winter. We'd expect that most of the sort of confirmation letters of eligibility would have gone out. But if you are unsure or think you should have got some notification, it is always worth sort of checking with your supplier. So that's very much the main sort of direct energy bill support mechanism out there. But we also have a couple of other ones from government. So we have the winter fuel payments. That's sort of £100 to £300 for older people, usually sort of paid again automatically if you're in receipt of a state pension. And then finally, we have the cold weather payment. So that would comprise of £25 payments for every 7-day cold spell. And eligibility wise, that's generally for households on certain benefits. But unlike the WHD, the cold weather payment just goes straight into your bank account as opposed to sort of credited on your electricity account. So that's the main sort of government-led schemes. In terms of local authority support, there's also some pretty key schemes out there. Firstly, it would be the Household Support Fund. So this is a pot of money that councils can use to help with essentials such as energy, food, or water. It's very much local and very much discretionary, so it can vary by area. Some councils will provide energy bill grants, some may use sort of voucher schemes. Eligibility here usually focuses on households in some kind of financial hardship. So often those are means tested benefits, low incomes, or those facing unexpected costs. Some councils will also include sort of families with children or pensioners or people with health conditions. So it is a little bit fragmented, and as such, there's no sort of national form to apply necessarily, but you would apply through your individual council. So funding for this is quite limited, can be a bit patchy, can be a bit of a postcode lottery, but it is worth inquiring. So again, checking your sort of council websites on that side. Beyond the sort of flagship direct government and local council sort of financial support, I'd like to highlight also just the value of independent advice in this area. So citizens advice, but also organisations such as ourselves, National Energy Action, can step in certain scenarios and guide you through essentially what you're eligible for, help with applications, whether that's for sort of direct support schemes or sort of benefit entitlement. So I would always recommend reaching out to those organisations such as ourselves on the energy side, which exists to help basically in these sort of cases. It would be remiss of me, of course, with Octopus Energy on the line, not to mention that suppliers themselves often do offer help. So it may be sort of flexible repayment plans, hardship funds, discretionary sort of funds and support. But I'm sure Octopus will cover that in detail themselves shortly. So I'll leave the supplier specific stuff to them. And then a final one is less so kind of direct financial support, but on the energy side, if you are vulnerable because of age, health, or disability, it's always worth inquiring or signing up to the Priority Services Register. So again, not direct financial sort of interventions, but that would provide extra support such as advance notice of outages, help with meter readings, and all that sort of stuff. So a few sort of avenues there in terms of the here and now, where you can apply for sort of energy related support. One that's sort of more looking ahead is that Ofgem, as the regulator, is consulting on and getting quite close to launching a debt relief scheme, which is coming probably early next year. Debt is a hugely prevalent sort of issue in the energy market, as millions of households face what are really persistent affordability challenges off the back of the energy crisis. And as a result, Ofgem has this plan to write off sort of up to around £500 million of energy debt accrued during the energy crisis for around sort of 200, 300,000 households. So if you are on means tested benefits and you have sort of eligible levels of debt built up during that period, you could see a significant write-off of those energy crisis linked debts. So this is one that's very much for the future. We'd expect it to maybe come in sort of spring 2026. And this would be very much kind of automatic process where suppliers would reach out to eligible customers. Again, not expecting it sort of tomorrow or across this winter, but it's one that's certainly coming and will impact particularly those in deep debts. Super. In terms of my second section, so what changed in the budget? I would say that in all honesty, the budget on 26th of November didn't necessarily provide anything new that would constitute sort of direct financial support for renters across this winter. But we did see several really key announcements that will sort of impact energy bills more widely in the months ahead. So the kind of energy headline, I suppose, coming out of the budget from government is that from April 2026, we'll see our energy bills drop a bit. And that's because the government is moving some of the policy costs, so the kind of non-wholesale costs, off the energy bill and into general taxation. And this will mean a sort of average saving of around £130 to £150 per year for the typical household, but this won't come, as said, until April 2026. So a slightly sort of future development that will sort of provide relief, but not for this winter. Another really key point is that the Energy Company Obligation, or ECO, so that's the scheme that funds insulation upgrades, particularly for sort of low income or fuel poor households, was confirmed in the budget to be ending from March 2026. So the scheme is still running now, but we don't expect necessarily huge amounts of activity or sort of new activity in the remaining period. And in any case, it's not a scheme that you sort of necessarily sign up to directly as a household or a renter. It's something that your landlord would sort of need to arrange with an installer. So that one slightly more obscured, but it will be removed from March 2026. So I suppose if you're in the process of getting an eco upgrade, keep it moving, but not necessarily something to sort of start from scratch. Another key development in the budget was something that we already knew, but nonetheless welcome, and that's the expansion of the Warm Home Discount eligibility criteria. So previously, you would receive the Warm Home Discount if you were in receipt of qualifying benefits and you fulfilled this sort of hard to heat criteria, so particularly inefficient housing, sort of spending a large amount of income on maintaining a warm home. There were some issues with this. It was excluding some people who really could have benefited from the scheme. So now it is simply being in receipt means that's the benefits that you need to receive the warm home discount. So that's sort of doubling the eligibility, going to around 6 million households this winter, which is hugely welcome. The aforementioned Household Support Fund we saw extended for another year in the budget, but nothing really material in terms of increases in funding or major scheme structure changes. So it will very much remain a kind of local and discretionary mechanism. So again, do check your council's website for more information on that one. And I suppose the kind of bottom line, at least from our side on the budget, was that the budget contained some really positive measures that will reduce energy bills, but generally these kind of interventions are going to help later as opposed to just this winter. I suppose aside from that warm home discount expansion and eligibility. So that leaves us with, for this winter, the sort of practical support available is the warm home discount, supplier hardship funds and support, council grants, and engaging with advice organisations, whether it's us, Citizens Advice, or sort of other more specific organisations. Super. And then finally from me is the question of whether there is government or council support to reduce energy use. The short answer is yes, there is, but it's not always necessarily easy to find. The big one here would be that Warm Homes Local Grant in England. So that scheme offers up to £15,000 for insulation and heating upgrades, plus another £15,000 for low carbon heating installs. It's very much aimed at low income households in inefficient properties, although it is again a bit of a kind of postcode lottery. Some councils have funding, some don't, some have more, some have less. So do check your council's website and ask your landlord to apply with you if relevant. The other one would be the aforementioned, but now sort of condemned or doomed eco scheme. As I said earlier, very much kind of energy efficiency scheme, providing a large amount of funding for particularly sort of insulation measures. Again, the sort of previous criteria apply. So it's more one that if you're in the process of getting an eco install, keep that up, but not necessarily one that's going to see a huge amount of new activity on that side. Again, the aforementioned Household Support Fund can play a little part here. Some councils will use that funding for sort of small energy efficiency measures or emergency heating support. One issue here, actually, that I should have mentioned earlier is that just awareness of these particular sort of local authority grants can be really low. So again, it's always worth just checking and inquiring because you never know on that side. Another more future development, but very sort of crucial on the energy efficiency side, would be the imminent publication of government's much anticipated Warm Homes Plan. So there's a major national programme with a big sort of pot of funding, essentially aimed at improving the energy efficiency and heating systems of homes across the country. It's not something that you can necessarily apply for today because it's more of a kind of future development, but I think it's relevant because it just really signals that there is going to be more investment in insulation and heating upgrades over the next few years. And government is sort of putting aside a large amount of funding for that exact purpose. I think for renters specifically, that can mean more opportunities for landlords to access the funding and improve their properties. Although it should be said, part of the sort of quid pro quo of removing the eco scheme from the budget was the announcement of additional funding for this warm homes plan to almost sort of replace that lost funding. So a bit of moving around the pieces, but we do see a significant amount of government funding being put towards specifically energy efficiency. On that note, another future gazing one, the government has signalled that minimum energy efficiency standards for rented homes will tighten over time. There's certainly talk and ambition around moving towards sort of higher EPC ratings for standard as the standard baseline for the private rental sector, but the details are sort of very much still being worked through. So something to keep an eye on more than worry about in the here and now. Great. That's a lot of waffling from my side, but hopefully a helpful sort of quick run through of what's out there and what's coming down the line. I suppose the big takeaway maybe would be that help does exist in the here and now and in a sort of variety of shapes and forms, but it can be sometimes fragmented, not necessarily always easy to find. But there is, again, more coming down the line with the price cap changes and the warm homes plan. So again, in terms of wrapping up, check for availability of those council grants. If you're struggling with bills, contact your supplier as early as possible. As I'm sure Octopus is going to run through, they can offer tailored support, may have sort of discretionary help, but also make use of advice services. So us or Citizens Advice, we can guide you through what's out there, help sort of navigate the litany of sort of grants and support schemes, and also welfare that's available. And yeah, to conclude, I suppose say help is out there and support is available, and it's always worth asking. Great, so that's
Great.
all from me. I'm back to
Great
Dan.
stuff. Thanks very much, mate, James. That was yeah, really, really comprehensive and really useful. I just had a quick question about uh, the reduction of the levies on bills that's coming in April. Um, do we know yet whether that's coming off the daily standing charge that everyone gets, or if that's coming off kind of the price per energy unit that so it depends how much energy you use kind of contributes to how much you're spending.
Yeah,
So maybe you can
absolutely.
share on that.
As I understand it, so the removal or the government sort of part funding the renewables obligation specifically would be on the unit rate. So that would reduce the cost, yeah, per unit of energy from April. Eco, which is being wound down and taken off the bill entirely. I should absolutely know this, but it's not at the front of my mind. So apologies. I think that would be on the standing charge, but yeah,
Right. Okay.
don't quote me on that one. RO is
Okay.
definitely unit rate.
Right. Right. Thanks very much. Maybe yeah, if it's we'll send something around to attendees tomorrow. So yeah, if you're able to clarify, that'd be great. Or perhaps our friends from Octopus will know. Who I will bring in now, if that's all right. Joseph and Jane, if you're ready,
Hello.
please. Yeah, see if you can. You've got some slides, so please
Technology piece.
try and get them up.
So good evening, everyone. So my name is Joe. I am an operations manager with Octopus Energy. With the company just coming up to 4 years now. I am a private renter myself. I'm hoping my slides are sharing. If someone can just nod really nicely. Cool. Yeah, everything I do pretty much all day, like anything from a meter reading, looking after customer accounts, like customer care is all I do all day, every day. And then I've got Jane with me as well.
Hi, my name is Jane. I'm here with Joe today. Also work at Octopus Energy as an operations manager. Worked here for 5 years. I just had my 5-year anniversary. So worked in energy for a good amount of time now. And similar to Joe, a lot of our day-to-day role is helping customers, speaking directly to customers, particularly customers who might be financially vulnerable, who might need a little bit of extra support. There's a lot of support needed this time of year. So we're hoping today we can give some advice and some recommendations and guidance, which hopefully might just help going through the winter as a private renter. I'm also a private renter, so hopefully know a little bit of the stresses of that and some of the things to look out for that sometimes I haven't looked out for and now know to. So yeah, next slide, please. Nice. So you're moving into a new rental property, you're moving between rental properties. These are just a bit of the top tips of things to know, things to look out for, things to do. The one of the main things that I look for when I'm looking to rent a new property or my tenancy is ending and I need to search a new property is when I'm looking at houses, I'm looking at flats, I look at the EPC ratings on each property. This is really important because essentially the higher the rating, the more energy efficient the property. Doesn't always mean your bills will be lower because if you use more, your bills might still cost a good amount. But the more energy efficient your property is, the less chance of them being higher, the better you can control your bills and manage your bills and your costs that are coming through. When you're looking at properties on Zoopla or Rightmove or whatever platform you use, it should always show the EPC rating really, really clearly and transparently. But if it doesn't, you should be able to contact whoever has put that ad up, whether that's the landlord or the agency, and they will always be able to give that to you. There's not any reason why they shouldn't show that transparently. But yeah, aim between the A and the C EPC rating. It usually means it has a good energy efficiency. The next thing, once you've secured your home and you're beginning to rent, is read your contract fully. It's not too frequent this happens, but sometimes you will have a all bills inclusive in your contract, and it means that you might not manage your energy bills. They might be out of your control. They might be part of the rent that you pay anyway. But if you are paying and liable for the bills and there aren't any restrictions on how you manage them, then hopefully a lot of the advice that we give today will be really useful and really relevant to you. Yeah, so definitely read through your contract, just check for your restrictions, check that you're totally aware of what your tenancy will look like. Yeah, next thing to do is no one contact your supplier. Sometimes when you move into a property, you will get a letter just through the door and you'll immediately know who you're supplied by. But this doesn't always happen. It's something to have on your list of things to do initially, just to know who your supplier is. If your landlord or your agency don't immediately tell you, they should give you that information quite readily. But if they don't for any reason, websites like USwitch, usually you can just type your postcode in and it will tell you who's currently supplying you. Once you know who that supplier is, you can find out what your costs are and you can use comparison sites to check, do you want to stay with that supplier? Is it the best supplier for you? Do you want to switch to somewhere that's a little bit more affordable, that maybe has better deals, has better support? Either way, whether you decide to switch away or you decide to stay with the supplier, if you're living at the property at that point, it might take a couple of days to switch. So you do want to contact the current supplier, get your name down on the bill, let them know when you moved in, just so that they've got that there and you're not chased for an outstanding or final bill months later that you weren't aware of with a previous supplier you've switched away from. And if you've got multiple people at the property, probably good to get all the names down on the bill. It just means that they can manage it if you're ever not available too. Just good to have everyone in that shared household, including yourself, named on that bill. The next important one is meter readings. Do make sure to take a meter reading photo when you move into the property. If you're not sure which one is the reading, we get this a lot. Honestly, the best thing to do is just cycle through the screens and take a photo of each screen. Just having that photo from the day that you moved in or the day that you're moving out, it just means we can bill you completely accurately from the date you've started at the property or until the date you've ended at the property. If you've chosen to switch, do make sure you take a reading on the day that your switch is due. Again, it just means that we won't bill you to estimates, it will all be accurate. And finally, something that we see a little bit more frequently, especially in a block of flats or apartments, check your serial number matches what is on your bill from your energy supplier. Again, if you're not sure where your serial number is on your meter or where it is on your bill, ask your supplier, take some photos, use Google, they will have your type of meter and where the serial number is located pretty clearly for you. But it just means you can check that the serial number on your meter matches that which is on your bill, and it just means you know you're paying for your energy, definitely, if there's a lot of meters, especially. And finally, and importantly, if you do fall under PSR, which is Priority Services Register, so that could be if you have a disability or children under 5 at the property, it could be if you have refrigerated medication. There's lots of different categories that you may fall into that might make you slightly vulnerable. And if this is the case, just let your supplier know from the beginning. It just means that we're aware of any vulnerabilities with you or anyone at the property, and it means that we can be there to support in the best way possible throughout your time at the property. So that's a really important one, not to forget.
Cool. Thanks, Jane. I'll keep us going. So going to talk a little bit about managing your actual energy bills, so bills that apply to you. No two households look the same when it comes to energy bills. People might be similar, but even if you have someone that lives in the exact same flat as you next door, your usage can be totally different to theirs. People live different lives, different usage habits, different appliances. There's so many factors And if you have concerns or questions over your bill and your usage, speak to your supplier, whether it's another energy supplier. I will not name anyone because I feel like we'll get in trouble, but speak to your supplier because they're the best people to guide you through what your usage and your bill looks like. Leads me into my next little bit here, like understand and manage your payments. Understand what you're paying. Do you know how much you're paying each month? Does that make sense to you? How does that correlate with your bill? You always have a choice with how you pay for your bills. Most energy suppliers will recommend direct debits. Direct debit customers often pay less because there's different kind of regulatory pieces that form unit rates off the back of that. I'll touch on that when I talk about tariffs in a second, but you could be paying via check. You could be on prepayment meters where you pay in advance. You could pay by bank transfer, standing order, but we tend to recommend direct debit. You're then covered by the direct debit guarantee, gives consumers more protection. Understand your tariff. So when you are a customer of an energy company or an energy supplier, you will have a tariff. A tariff applies like what you are charged either per unit, so per kilowatt hour of energy, and what you're paying in terms of standing charge per day to have that supply. Those figures should be on your bill. If you can't find them, again, best bit of advice, speak to your supplier. It should be there. If it's not, speak to your supplier. They can guide you through what your unit rates are and what unit rates might be available. Both me and Jane, massive advocates of smart meters. But if you don't have one, make sure you take readings. Take them regularly where you can. If you're able to, submitting one once a month just means that you're getting statements or bills on a regular basis. Makes it easier to kind of keep on control of your bills because they're coming at regular intervals rather than covering large amounts of time. If you do have a smart meter or you're interested in getting one, worth speaking to your landlord first to make sure they give permission for you to have a smart meter installed. But if you already have one, there's loads of benefits. They will take readings for you automatically. Opens up different insights in terms of understanding what your bill is. There's sometimes different tariff options with different suppliers that might open up different doorways to tariffs that might make more sense for you. A lot of information there, but I hope I've kind of summed that bit up. I've then popped this in here just as a bit of a summary of things that Octopus can do specifically. So if you are with us, number one, if you ever need to talk to us, hello@octopus.energy. You can talk to us whenever you want to, really. There'll always be someone really friendly wanting to come back to your email. We have a couple of really useful things that can actually kind of help understand your bill a little bit better and help kind of empower customers to be in control of their bills. So Octoplus is one of them. It's kind of like our reward scheme. So it's encouraging smart energy habits in the form of like points, rewards, and prizes. Loads of details about that on our website. We have a little device, which is the one on the right there, which is called our Octopus Home Mini. Very smart little box, dials into a smart meter if you have one, and it shows your usage in near real time in both pound and pence and kilowatt hours. One of the best tools you can have in terms of like looking into when you're using energy, how you're using energy. Bottom left is our balance forecast tool. So if you are a customer that pays via direct debit, it maps out your energy account balance over time. So you can understand the impact of what you're paying each month and how that will affect your account potentially in the future. That could be building credit towards future usage through winter, through summer. And then back over to you, Jane.
Thanks so much. So we're going to go into now a little bit of things that can support you and your home, and particularly support your bills, especially through winter. Yeah, so these are some things that all suppliers should offer that should help you manage your bill costs. So again, always check your contract, make sure that you're able to do these things. But a big one is switching supplier. Just make sure that your current supplier is offering the right type of support, but also the right costs that suit you and your usage. You can regularly use comparison sites whenever you'd like to check if there's anything or anyone cheaper for you. And at any point you can switch away. Something to be mindful for is exit fees. If you have exit fees with your current supplier, if you're on a fixed tariff, it's just something to have in your mind if you do plan to switch supplier frequently. Adjustable tariffs. So if you're staying with the same supplier, it doesn't mean you have to stay on the same tariff. Tariffs are the main thing that control what your bills cost. Obviously, there's your usage, but it's per kilowatt is what you are charged, and it's per standing rate per day. So it's a really good one to make sure you are on the best tariff for yourself. Again, check out for any exit fees. If you're on a fixed tariff and you want to change, it might come with a cost. So just make sure and watch out for any exit fees. Joe covered this pretty nicely, but a smart meter installation, it is courtesy to let your landlord know that you would like to have one installed. They're usually pretty open to it. They're usually pretty on board with it, to be honest, because it just means that if there's any period where the property is vacant and there's nobody in it, they will still be getting readings through. It will reflect that nobody's using energy at the property, which only helps them and you. And how you pay. Direct debits are a great way to pay. They can sometimes even lower the cost of your bills, but not everyone likes to have a direct debit, and not everyone likes to have bills come out monthly either. With most suppliers, you can choose instead to do a standing order. You can pay manually over the phone. You can also choose the pattern in which to pay, so you can do it weekly if it doesn't suit you monthly, bi-weekly, sometimes even quarterly, to suit when your money is coming in, and avoiding you being put in a bad position if a direct debit comes out suddenly and unexpectedly. These are just some more things that maybe we don't always think about that can really go a long way in supporting your bills. So accessible refunds, we see all the time customers that are in an excess of credit on their account. It's built up over summer and it's still not maybe used over winter. At Octopus, if you have more than £5 in your account, you can ask for the excess refunded into your bank account. Not sure what other suppliers have as that threshold, but it's always worth asking. If you've got a couple of £100 on there, even if you've got £100 on there, sometimes that can be more useful in your bank account than on your energy account, and they are accessible to you. You just ring your supplier or check your app, whichever method your supplier uses, and you can have access to refunds of funds in your account. Energy advice, obviously we're offering some energy advice today, but no one will know what better advice to give than your current energy supplier. They will have access to what you're actually using, what you're actually spending, what your costs are, and they will have knowledge of the energy industry. They might notice that you're using a lot of your energy at night, and there might be a specific tariff that they can offer that offsets those costs and offers lower costs during the off-peak times when you most frequently use your energy. So it's always worth speaking to your supplier, asking if you're doing everything you can to keep everything low, talk them through how you use things, and they can give some personalised advice on spending less, on using less, on being more efficient. Fixed tariffs, I find this a really good one if you're moving into the property and you're only on a short-term contract. For the last few years, I've only lived in a property for about 12 months at a time, and then I've needed to move somewhere else. It's really helpful sometimes to fix in a tariff for that period of time. It just means that with the energy costs fluctuating, you don't necessarily need to worry about that. You'll be on a fixed cost for that year. It doesn't mean you'll always use the same amount, so your bills might come to a different amount, but the unit charges and the standing charge, that won't change within the period of time it's fixed for. And finally, prepayment mode. If you do have a smart meter, you can usually go into a prepayment mode, and this is becoming increasingly more popular with the rise of smart meters in households. It just means that rather than doing something like a direct debit or a standing charge, instead you can top up via your app or on the phone. You can top up and then use that usage you're topping up by. Helps you feel more in control of your bills and helps with spending a lot of time for customers. What's good about it as well is if you move out of the property, we can move it back into credit mode and out of prepayment mode if your landlord doesn't want it set up like that long term. So it's quite accessible and it doesn't impact your landlord negatively.
Stunning.
And I think actually James covered this really, really nicely, that there are a lot of grants and schemes available from the government, but given through your supplier. If you check your energy supplier or you check with any type of local authority or even on the government website, you will have access to all the types of payments and discounts that the government offers. And there's more there than you might think. It's always worth having a look. It's always worth asking your supplier what you might have access to and what you could use. Next slide, please. And finally, if you have Octopus, we do have an Octo Assist fund. For Octopus specifically, this is a 45 million customer help fund. You can apply for things like free electric blankets. I've got one right now. It's super useful if you are particularly a single person household and you don't want to heat up your entire house, but you're feeling quite cold. It's a really affordable way to warm yourself up, and we do offer them for free to customers. We also do a free loaning of thermal cameras. So we'll go into some like efficiency of homes and a little bit in one of them is checking for drafts, checking where you might be losing energy efficiency from your home. And thermal cameras are great for that. You attach it to your smartphone and it will show you where heat might be escaping. We offer also a system called Paylinks for more personalised support. It's accessible via the website, but also by phone call. And through this, you will tell us what your financial situation is, what support you might need, maybe what you're struggling with at the moment. And you're never alone in that struggle. We will usually have a way that we can help you. Sometimes that might look like payment matching. We pay, you pay. So doing that with you, going on that journey together. Sometimes that might look like a standing charge holiday. It could look like direct support with your bills and some money on your account from us. It might look like some personalised advice and help and signposting. This isn't an exhaustive list. There's lots of different things that we offer, but it's very catered for each customer and the scenario that they're in. We're not the only supplier that offers a fund like this. We know the most about this being from Octopus, but I'm pretty sure most suppliers will offer a fund similar to this. And all you need to do is get in touch with them, ask them what they do offer if you're going through a hard time, and they can be there for you, and they can let you know what they offer. Citizens Advice, James mentioned this, but it's a really, really helpful place to look at what grants and what's benefits and what support is offered per supplier. I'm pretty sure they have a full list of what each supplier offers. So it's a really helpful thing to look at. Maybe also if you're switching supplier and you're not sure who to go with, maybe that's a good place to look at who could support you the best. So yeah, definitely a great place to look is Citizens Advice, and there's always something that a supplier can do.
I'll keep us going. Very wary that we are trying to bombard as much information as possible here as well, aren't we, Jane? So improving efficiency of your home. I've got some figures on here, which is more Energy Saving Trust kind of guidance. Biggest takeaway here, Energy Saving Trust has a really, really useful website. You can pop in where you live on that website, and it will give you tips related to reducing your energy costs, like saving you money, making your home more efficient based on where you live geographically. A couple of really good things on there, like in terms of like installing draft proofing. As a tenant, there's some things that you can do, like maybe buying a draft excluder, but then there's things that you might want your landlord to take action on. Really, really good website, worth going on there, having a look at what tips apply to your household. In terms of like some really, really big tips from us or like some kind of easy wins, going to shout out a couple of these. So my favorite one on here is this idea of nighttime routines. I know that's right in the middle. That feels really chaotic with me going to the middle of my slide. Okay. But little things like closing your curtains before the sun sets. Okay. It keeps heat inside your home. When the sun is shining naturally, it heats your home. Have a nighttime routine where you get in habits and you kind of know how to keep the heat inside your property. Little things like closing curtains make a massive difference. I've got adjusting the flow temperature on your boiler on here. Only works with combi boilers. But setting that temperature to between 55 and 60 degrees, can you save quite a bit of money on your bill? I have got air drying clothes on here, which can be, well, it's quite an interesting talking point for us. Depending on your household, you may or may not have this option. Like if you are lucky enough that you've got the ability to hang clothes outside, that costs you nothing. Okay, it's going to save you that energy. But if you are in a house where damp is potentially an issue, then maybe air drying is the best option. But in short, if you don't have to do it, it's potentially going to save you money because you're not using that energy. I'm not going to dwell too much on these, but again, be bright with lights. LED bulbs do use less energy, but little things like turning things off when you're not using them can be a massive, massive win over time. Back to you, Jane.
Yeah, so again, on energy saving, there's a few things that we offer specifically at Octopus. With the rise of smart meters being used, suppliers are offering more and more incentives like this because we're able to see your energy in a more live way, meaning that we can offer more things to our customers. One of the things that we offer specifically is something called saving sessions. This is cutting down on energy at certain times of the day. It has such a big impact cutting down on that energy at certain times. And so with saving sessions, we pay you to use less power when it's most important and most impactful. This isn't something you have to track yourself. If you're part of saving sessions and you opt in, we will always notify you through WhatsApp or a text or an email. We'll let you know when is the best time to use to use for power, essentially. In 2025, we had 15 of these saving sessions, 19 hours worth of free electricity, in which our customers earned around £3 million total from using that free power. So again, with being able to see live usage on smart meters, from being given regular readings, we can see how much is being used. We can offer incentives like this. This is rising in popularity, but something called Fan Club we offer. And any electricity used while your local turbine is spinning automatically benefits from a 20% discount on your bill. So again, it's something you might not be aware of that we did as a supplier, but it's really helpful if you're part of it. You can save quite a lot of money in these incentives. This is obviously specifically what we offer, but again, there are incentives like this with any supplier, and it's never a bad thing to call them and ask to look at their website, to look at your app, just see what's available, because there's usually something and it's worthwhile doing. And finally, some extra resources. I think someone did actually put a question about where is a good place to go for some impartial advice. Obviously, as a supplier, we try to be as impartial as possible, but it might not always feel that way because we are a business. There are plenty of places that can give impartial advice. I mentioned Citizens Advice earlier, and I think that's a really brilliant one. We signpost customers there a lot, and they can give you the information. They can send you to some great resources if they don't have that information. But the Gov website is another great one, letting you know what energy efficient schemes that we offer. Smart Meters GB is a great one. It's a government campaign bringing smart meters to the UK, and it highlights all the ways you can use your smart meter to use your energy more efficiently. So again, some impartial but great advice. And the Energy Saving Trust, we mentioned this one, but they've got some amazing resources on there. They're a government-backed energy efficiency advice for your home. Check their site for loads of helpful energy saving advice. So yeah, you've got your supplier to come to for support. You've got the Gov website, and you've got Energy Saving Trust and many more resources. You're never alone with this stuff. No one can ever know all the right stuff to do, and I feel like even as a supplier, we're learning more every year, every week about what could be better, what could help people more, what helps homes be efficient, what helps us save money. So you can never go wrong with giving your supplier a call, going on these websites, looking at what's available for you. I think James mentioned earlier there's loads of incentives for local councils, and maybe we don't always know that they're there. So there's nothing wrong with going and looking at a local council. What do they offer me? The worst thing that can happen is there isn't that support there. The best thing that can happen is there are loads of support that you didn't know about that now you can benefit from. So yeah, you're never alone with this stuff. There's loads of resources. This is just a handful.
Done in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe and Jane. That was excellent. And thanks again to James. We've got a few questions which I'll run through. Which should we should have plenty of time to get through those, and if we don't, I'll have a few questions as well. So let's see. Sorry, just bear with me. Just trying to scroll up the screen. Here we are. First question: if you have a smart meter, should you still send readings occasionally? And if yes, how often?
Happy to take this.
Mhm.
I didn't know if anyone
Please.
else had a meeting. I would say that as long as your smart meter is working and sending us reads, then no, you shouldn't need to. It should be live, it should be sending us data, but it's always worth, I would say, checking your app if you use the app for your supplier, checking that readings are still coming through, that it's connected, that it's showing your usage. I don't think there's anything wrong with just giving it a quick check, and if you see for some reason there's any data missing, then you can go to your meter, you can take a reading. Some days it's good to do this is if you know there is a cost change coming. So if you know, for example, your tariff is going to change cost, there's a cost increase coming, even though you can usually trust that your smart meter is working, I'd say that's probably the instance where you want to be safe, you want to take a backup reading. And if you're moving home, if you're moving in, if you're moving out, just a backup, you shouldn't need to, but it's a good idea to, just in case something's happened. But as long as it's connected, you should be fine in terms of month to month adding of a read.
To be fair, Jane, I'd
Great.
agree.
I'm just
Go on.
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, like, as tenants, like, I think having a photo of your readings, like, on days that matter to you, i.e., like start of tenancy, end of tenancy, really, really good to have. Okay.
And if you're switching supplier, this has happened to me. I had a smart meter and switched supplier, and it took ages for the new supplier to kind of get used to the smart meter.
Yeah.
And I mean, is that this was a couple of years ago, so it might have improved since then, the technology, but I don't know. Is that something you encounter? Should
It happens
renters be
sometimes.
aware of that?
I would say like moving in and moving out, that's where it maybe the most risky. If you've got a smart meter that works but sending regular readings, it's usually absolutely fine. Particularly on your move out day, it's fine. But if you're switching to a new supplier, I think it's safest just to have a backup. Like Joe said,
Yeah.
it probably doesn't take long, probably about 5 minutes when I take a reading from my meter particularly. But it's worthwhile just having that backup if you know that prices are changing, moving into a new property, switching supplier, just have it there so you know you'll get an accurate bill. And in most cases, you won't need it, but at least if you do need it, it's there. In terms of month to month, though, if your app shows your smart meter connected, then you're absolutely fine.
Brilliant, thanks. We had a question about impartial advice that was covered on the on your final slide, so hopefully that's useful and for that person who asked that question. We've got one here regarding the Warm Homes discount. It states that the bill must be in your name by August the 24th. I moved into my current home in June. It took some time to set up the electricity account, which was finally done by September, but I had to pay for the supply from June. Will I still be able to claim the Warm Home discount? Is anyone able to answer that?
Have you changed? Well, there's lots of potential different elements in there. Let me just read again. I know it's an individual thing. State the bill must be in a name. June. It really depends, like if you've changed supplier in that time as well. Depending who your supplier is on the Warm Home discount kind of like cut-off dates, it depends who is the liable supplier to be paying out that scheme. So if you've moved in and there was a different supplier before that date, it might be worth speaking to them at the same time. With that one, I would genuinely speak to your supplier first, just to find out what details they hold, make sure that they match up with the details you know to be true, and then I'd ask for their guidance based on that one, just to kind of make sure that you're doing the right things. Which that's fair, Jane?
Yeah, I think in that sort of situation, it's always best to ask your supplier, right? It might be that you are due it and you are supposed to have it. If you ring your supplier and you check in on it, they should usually know. In Octopus specifically, we have a whole team this time of year that is really focusing just on warm home discounts. If we had a customer call in and check if they were eligible, check what was going on, we should be able to see, are they going to be contacted? Have they already been contacted? What's their situation? So definitely ask your supplier and they'll be able to tell.
Great, thanks very much. We have a question. Well, it's a comment really. Someone says they use the thermal insulation film for windows, which they found easy to apply and remove, and you can do this yourself. Is that anyone had any encounters with this? And yeah,
I've had personal experience with this.
Mhm.
And while I know people that it's been very good for me, it didn't work, but it was just the unique windows that I had where I was living. Okay. So maybe someone else might be better on that one.
Okay. Is it? I mean, one thing that I've experienced is we had some really old double glazing here, and they got replaced, and you could there's a huge difference. The room felt more comfortable and didn't get condensation, kind of, during the winter. Is how much of a difference does double glazing, particularly if it's fresh double glazing, does that is that something that renters is that worth pestering your landlord about, or is it something is there something else that might make a bigger difference?
I have, well, I guess different households might have different answers. I've been in a situation where I have not had
Yeah.
double glazing, and then I've gone into a house that does, and I did notice a difference within the billing, but I also just noticed directly a difference in how much I needed to put the heating on right, and like how much I needed to use an electric blanket, how much draft was getting in. So I would say anything that you can do to keep the draft in, to plug holes, to keep the warmth in should be beneficial for you not needing to use things like heating, electric blankets, and therefore should lower your energy bills. Probably depends on the specific property. That was just my experience going from somewhere that was absolutely freezing cold and then going somewhere where the windows were actually properly done and really, really helped my bills personally.
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying as well, like there's requirements like with landlords renting properties in terms of like what EPC ratings should be for a property. Um, James, you might be able to comment a little bit better. But in terms of like the legalities, like if you are below a certain EPC rating, landlords should be taking active action to improve that rating. And if double glazing is not installed, that could be one of the actions that your landlord might choose to take or be required to take to improve the overall EPC rating of that property.
Thanks. We've had a question sort of on that. Are there new rules on energy ratings coming in? I could probably come in on this just because it's something that we work on as Generation Rent. But they say I currently live in E property, APCE, and wondered if I can get my landlord to improve it. So I'll take the first one, which is consulted on new rules, and I believe that any details of the new rules and when they'll come in will be announced as part of the Warm Homes Plan, which we are hoping will be in the next few months. It's apparently been delayed already. We were supposed to have it in October, but they're sitting on it. I think maybe now we've had the budget, the government will announce it. But yeah, is there any thoughts on asking your landlord to improve a property rated E? James.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. As you mentioned, the upcoming legislation, which, as expected, would set that minimum efficiency standard for the private rented sector at C or above, would be a very sort of strong tool to point to, I suppose, in compelling the landlord to make those upgrades. As it stands today, it's E or lower as the sort of trigger for action. So I believe that there should be some sort of justification of saying meeting that particular sort of current requirement, albeit not as strong as the future requirement that we're expecting. And it can be tricky. And in terms of accessing the government schemes that would sort of subsidize or provide those home upgrades, it's often a sort of landlord-led sort of thing because the schemes require kind of quite fundamental changes to the property. So the tenant themselves can't necessarily apply directly. But again, yeah, you obviously would benefit from getting your landlord on board, but getting the landlord on board might be the harder part. But again, upcoming legislation will be kind of looming, so that's a potential kind of foothold on that side, I suppose. It is always worth checking sort of local council schemes as well, or kind of different options within the eco scheme, so EcoFlex, for example, for those extra routes. But generally, it is going to be a kind of landlord-led endeavour.
Great, thanks very much. There's one question here, getting close to the end, so I'll try and rush through these. I live in a multi-occupancy house, but the landlord has bills in his name. How do I benefit as a tenant from any of the energy efficiency measures indicated from any government scheme? Any views on that? Is that would you need to demonstrate that you were eligible yourself? I suppose that if you were living with other single adults in a house like that, might be difficult. But,
it probably depends what the setup is, right? I think if the bills are in the landlord's name because you live in a property where maybe it's all inclusive and maybe you don't specifically pay your bills as they come, but instead it's sort of covered in the cost of your rent. In that case, you might not be able to. It might be your landlord who would benefit from those things. It might depend on which sort of grant or which scheme you're looking for. I think in that situation, look for your contract. Why is it your landlord's names on the bills rather than yourself? If it's that, it's something that they've set out in your contract, then it might be on some level out of your control. But it's always best, I would say, to check your contract, talk to your landlord to understand the setup, I definitely think that if your landlord is responsible, it's stipulated in the contract, but you notice that there's a scheme that could benefit the property and the costings, then it's beneficial just to talk to your landlord and let them know. Let the agency know if you go for an agency rather than directly to your landlord. And if they feel they're beneficial, then they might work with you to apply those things. Probably depends what type of support you're after, and probably depends what reason that setup is set up in that way. Yeah.
Thanks, very thanks. Just a couple more I'll read out. There's a question about Section 21. This is the law that allows landlords to evict tenants without needing a reason. That's still in place until May the 1st, so it is still possible for a landlord to issue a Section 21 notice between now and the end of April. But after that, landlords need a valid reason to evict tenants, so that can potentially give tenants more confidence to ask their landlord to make improvements. And just a final comment from another person on the webinar. This may be more relevant for people with older boilers using analog timer switches. Smart plugs can be used to connect your home broadband, so you can turn it on and off when out of the house. So that's helpful. If you don't have a combi boiler or car.
Smart plugs they have changed my life, I will say that. As someone who used to forget to turn their straighteners off all the time and have to go back home from work. But I agree, they are totally helpful. When you realise you've left some things on in the house, that can be a spend on your bills. So knowing you can just switch them off in one place goes a long way.
Great. Thanks very much. We're going to wrap up here. I'm going to just share my screen of a few final things that people can do to stay involved. So just bear with me. I'll get that up on the screen. But just to say thanks so much, Jane, Joe, and James, for your expertise today. It's been really, really